Now we're just going to take a soft cloth and wipe each acorn squash off, getting in all the cracks, just making sure we get off any debris so we're not eating that later. We've let our squash sit for approximately 10 to 15 minutes. I'm not sure if you can see, the water's a little dirty, so we've gotten all that off. Now we're just going to rinse them and slice them and get them ready for the oven. Now we're just going to take a soft cloth and wipe each acorn squash off, getting in all the cracks, just making sure we get off any debris so we're not eating that later. Now we have finished washing our squash, and usually I would go ahead and wash the rest of our fresh produce, but cooking is about time management. So at this point we need to go ahead and get our squash in the oven because it's going to need to cook for over an hour. So we're not going to wash our vegetables at this point. We're just going to go ahead and prepare our squash for the oven. And now we are going to slice our squash. I'm going to use a sharp knife and just follow the natural line very carefully. Now, as you can see, we have these beautiful seeds. They kind of look like pumpkin seeds or cantaloupe seeds. So we're just going to take this part out. We're going to do the same thing with the second half. Okay, we've gotten all the seeds out. To get the pulp out, we're just going to use a spoon for that. Let's scrape that out. You may have to put some little work in it. It's not easy. It's kind of a fibrous texture, much like a pumpkin. As you can see, I didn't get them even. They were kind of hard to cut, so we'll try to do the second one a little more evenly. But either way, it'll still taste good. Now this one I am going to hollow it out just a little bit more to give us room to get plenty of our filling on the inside. Okay. So as you can see, we have these beautiful seeds. They are edible. Some countries like Argentina, they grow these acorn squash solely to feed to cattle. Now to prepare our acorn squash for the oven, we're going to use some olive oil. You can use the oil of your choice. This recipe calls for avocado, but I didn't have any. So I'm just going to lightly put a little on each one and spread it all around. Not only the inside, but the outside skin as well. And this is just going to help the squash cook on the outside without drying out. Now to cook them, we're just going to place them down on our pan. But first, we'll season them before we place them face down. So as I stated before, you just cover the inside and outside of all four of the halves, or how many you have. You could easily triple or double this recipe for Thanksgiving dinner or parties. This would be a very cool way to serve a meal. It's a beautiful presentation, as we'll see coming up. So now that we've got our melon's covered. We're just going to season with salt and pepper to taste. If you're a big pepper fan, you can add more or less depending on your diet, what your diet dictates. The next thing that we're going to add is Himalayan pink salt. This seasoning is also going to be used to taste, whatever your diet dictates. Now that we've got our squash seasoned, we're just going to flip them over. And we're going to keep them flipped over on this side the entire time they're cooking, which is going to be about an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 50 minutes, depending on the size. Now, when I was at the grocery store, I purposely chose smaller ones, keeping the cooking time in mind. Now that we have our squash in the oven, we've set an alarm to check them in about 45 minutes, just to see how they're doing. So, proceeding on with the good time management, we're going to go ahead and wash our vegetables and get those ready for our chickpea salad. Now that we are halfway through the cooking process for our acorn squash, our quinoa is going to take about 20 minutes, so we're going to go ahead and get that heated up. Our quinoa package, this is the kind I'm using here, it's organic. It says you need a 1.25 quart size saucepan, which we have here. You're going to add 1 cup of quinoa and 2 cups of water. Now, before cooking the quinoa, you have to first rinse it. So I'm going to add it to this bowl, and rinse it off. This is what our quinoa looks like as we rinse it. I just have it in just regular water, nothing in the water. And we're just going to rinse this to get any loose debris. And this also helps soften the outside of the hull to make the cooking process a little faster. See how the water's getting a little cloudy? Okay, now we're just going to strain this and add it to our water in the pan. So we have our quinoa in the pan. We're just going to let this cook. It says on the package to bring it to a boil and then reduce the heat. Now we're just going to continue cutting all of our vegetables into bite-sized pieces. Just going to take the skin carefully off of the cucumber. You could also use a vegetable peeler, or you could also opt to leave the skin on. For this particular recipe, I am going to take the skin off. Okay, now just to check up on our time management, we have our quinoa. It just came to a boil and I turned it down. I have that on medium heat. I'm gonna turn it down a little bit more. And we also have this beautiful acorn squash in the oven. Let me get my pot holder here. See how shiny the oil made them. Now to test to see if they're done, you're gonna poke them on the outside and see how easily that goes in. Now so far it's been right around 35 minutes. And I think before I said they needed to cook for over an hour, but actually I was wrong. It's 40 to 50 minutes. So we're gonna give these just a couple more minutes. Now we are going to put together the filling for our acorn squash. We have apples, celery, garlic, and once that sautés, Then we're going to add our quinoa that we fixed earlier. Okay, now that our pan is heating up, we are going to add the celery and the onions first. Of course, we're adding these two menu items first, or ingredients first, because they take the longest to cook. Okay, so you're just going to move those around so they don't burn. Now our onions and celery are starting to cook down. The onions and celery smell really good together, so now we're going to add our apple. Okay. Now we're going to add the garlic. I'm going to add just a couple more drops of olive oil. The pan seems a little dry to me for some reason. If you're on a no oil diet, you could actually steam this. Just add a few drops of water. And you can steam your vegetables the same way that you would cook with oil. See, the olive oil helps it cook down more. Now our mixture for the filling for the acorn squash is getting very soft. As you can see, the apples getting very tender. So before they get too tender, we're going to go ahead and mix in, well, it's salt and pepper to taste, just a little bit. And we'll add our quinoa just a little bit at a time. I use the rubber spatula so I don't scratch my pan. Add just a little more quinoa. I'm just going to mix this in. Oops, lost the apple there. And this is what's going to go in the middle of our squash. Okay. So while that's finishing up, I'm just going to grab our acorn squash.